Did you know that March is Women's History Month, National Nutrition Month, and National Kidney Month? It is basically a month honoring everything that is Melanie and the Kidney Dietitian. To celebrate, I'm running special pop-up sales for the entire month of March 2024. To stay informed, make sure you are on my email list. You can get a free kidney-friendly snack list and subscribe to get all the details of these special sales all month at www.kidneystonefreebie.com. That is www.kidneystonefreebie.com. Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the 35th episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. And today I wanted to dedicate an entire episode to a topic that I feel very passionately about, which is why it can truly be dangerous and harmful to take what I'm going to call "it worked for me" advice for kidney stones. You see this type of thing all the time, like especially in Facebook groups or Reddit forums or other social media platforms and blogs and like all sorts of stuff. You see this all the time. You see, I took XYZ supplement and it worked for my cousin's sister and she hasn't had a kidney stone since taking the supplement. And it's, people feel very passionately about this, and it's very easy for someone with kidney stones to kind of fall into this trap of like, these people said it worked. And of course, when you say anything online, you're going to get a barrage of people saying, oh yeah, that worked for me, or that worked for my uncle, or, and people just really feel that they have found the answer to kidney stones. So, even when I post something, I do, you've likely been around me a long time, and I try to do a lot of myth busting because there are so many kidney stone myths out there that just are completely not backed by research. And so I try to do my best to, as politely as possible, correct people and say, oh, well, there's actually no data to support this. But then I inevitably will get some hate, but this worked for me. And, you don't know what you're talking about. Who are you? And so I just know that it can be kind of a confusing, emotional, nasty environment out there when you are spending a lot of time in kidney stone forums. And so I wanted to kind of break down why it really is such a bad idea to take this type of advice, and why it is so important that whatever dietary or any type of change you're making, and this is true for kidney stones or any other sort of lifestyle or diet change, why it really is a bad idea to take this type of advice. I felt like this was maybe especially relevant for listeners of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast, because I truly think that having kidney stones, and especially when you've been dealing with kidney stones chronically, I've worked with people who have literally had hundreds, if not thousands, of kidney stones. This makes you really desperate, understandably. There is you're willing to do anything to stop those stones, and that's just going to make you more susceptible to falling into the traps of this type of advice, the sort of sensationalized advice. And so I really hope that this episode is helpful for all of you out there and helps you maybe kind of sift through some of the noise and stick to what we really know and what the research has showed for kidney stone prevention. So, like I said, I broke this down into 3 main reasons why it's a really bad idea to take what I'm going to call "it worked for me" advice, whether it be online or from friends and family, or honestly, even your doctor. I hear from people all the time that their doctors are telling them to do silly things. Someone just yesterday actually said that their doctor told them to start drinking Coke because that's going to, quote, dissolve kidney stones. And when you look at the data, all sorts of sugary beverages, including Coke, are associated with a higher risk of stones. And so there's just a lot of bad advice out there. Okay, so the first reason why this is a bad idea to take it worked for me advice, if you will, is that we have no idea if that is the reason. Whatever advice they're giving you, whether it's a supplement or to follow a low oxalate diet or to avoid milk or start drinking lemon juice, we have no idea. That person has no idea if that's the reason that they didn't have any other stones. So I'm not saying that that person doesn't know their body and doesn't know what makes them feel good or not, but kidney stones are so difficult to study for lots of reasons. And one of the reasons is that, they can form, we really have no idea when a stone is formed, because stones can hang out in your kidney for the rest of your life and cause no issues. People all the time will sort of coincidentally discover that they have kidney stones because of something else going on. And those kidney stones could have been in them for literally decades. And so it's really difficult to sort of pinpoint what really makes a difference because we have no idea when kidney stones are formed. And so maybe this person, does have kidney stones, but they don't know. Or maybe that person, that whatever change they made didn't really make a difference and they wouldn't have had a kidney stone otherwise, right? So maybe they started taking XYZ supplement or made whatever change, but how do we know that they wouldn't have had a stone otherwise? So maybe that's really not doing anything and they're wasting a lot of money and time on whatever supplement or change that they're working on. Another big reason why we can't just take, it worked for Joe Schmo, is that there are a million other things going on in our lives that could have impacted that chance or likelihood that that person forms a stone or not. So we know that kidney stones are a result of all sorts of things. It's not just our diet, as much as I would like to think it is. It certainly is not. Kidney stones have a genetic component. There's a nutrition diet component, obviously. There's a medication component. There is a lifestyle component. So being in certain environments, maybe starting running could actually cause stones because it makes you more dehydrated if you're not replenishing that water, right? Or stress, even like emotional, psychological stress has been found to be associated with kidney stones. So there are tons of these different confounders that could be going on. So practically never, right, do you go through life and every day is exactly the same and then you make this one change, whether it, and that one change would be what this person is telling you prevented their stones, right? So whether it's this supplement or drinking this mix or who knows, right? People have all sorts of things. They have no idea that they cannot pinpoint this is the reason why I didn't have any more stones, because there are so many different things going on in our lives, right? Especially since kidney stones take so long to form, right? No one forms a stone in a day. When we think about kidney stone prevention, this is really months to years of things going on, whether it be diet or medications or stress or being chronically dehydrated or whatever it is, right? These stones are formed over a very long period of time. And there's no way that this person's life, last year was exactly the same as this year. Right? Because that's not how life is. Life is messy. There's lots of different things that happen. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to pinpoint in research as well, exactly what causes stones and what doesn't. Exactly for all these reasons I just talked about. One of the biggest things being that we, even in research, unless we're literally, imaging someone every single day, which is obviously not feasible nor safe for them, there's no way to know exactly when those stones formed. But the benefit of taking recommendations from research is that we can attempt to control for these types of confounders from a statistical standpoint, if that makes sense. So, we know a fair amount about stone prevention. We have a lot more to learn, but we do know a fair amount. And so we can take, when we have giant groups of people, we can take these things that we know contribute to stone formation or help prevent stones and sort of control for that noise, we'll call it. So we have a much better idea of pinpointing exactly what was going on that formed stones in this group of people in this research study or whatever it is. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important to avoid this "it worked for me" advice, is that we really have no idea if that is the reason why that person hasn't formed a stone or did form a stone for that matter. You can look at this from the other point of view too. A lot of people say, I formed stones because I was, downing spinach every day. Okay, but there was probably lots of other things that went on when you were downing spinach every day. Maybe you went completely vegan and completely forgot about calcium. So maybe you would have been completely fine if you did make a point to get enough calcium and the spinach was totally fine, right? So the point is, there's so much noise in each individual person's life, and we simply cannot make recommendations for what actually will prevent kidney stones unless we're looking at these research studies that are designed to pinpoint exactly what was going on and what actually is going to prevent stones. So that is reason number one, is that we don't know if that is the reason that person didn't have any more kidney stones. So the second reason why it's a really bad idea to take "it worked for me" advice is that we have no idea what kind of kidney stone that person had, likely. I doubt that you are going to get into a deep medical history with this guy on the bus or this guy on Facebook, right? To know exactly what kind of stone he had. But even more importantly is you don't know what was causing that person's kidney stone. If you've been around, that I speak very passionately about how there's no single kidney stone diet, just like there's no single thing that's going to prevent all types of kidney stones, even for the same type of kidney stone. Because even for, we'll use calcium oxalate as an example because that's the most common type of stone, so I tend to talk about it the most. But this is true for basically all types of stones, other than cystine and struvite. Those are very, very rare and are generally formed by some of the same things. But whether we're talking about calcium oxalate, calcium phosphate, or uric acid stones, there are many, many different potential causes of that same type of stone, so I may have a calcium oxalate stone that is being really driven by very high levels of urine calcium. For the record, that tends to be the most common driver of kidney stones. But the person sitting next to me who also had even an exact same type of calcium oxalate stone is forming stones because they had high urine oxalate. Or maybe the next person is doing it because they have low citrate in their urine. Or maybe the next person is doing it simply because they were super dehydrated and weren't drinking enough water, right? Like typically people have a couple different urine risk factors. So this is sort of simplifying it a bit, but you get the idea, right? The same type of stone is not an indication of what we can do to prevent it because there are massively different causes and combinations of causes about what was going on. And so unless you know what was going on with that person's urine and why they were forming stones, and is that even the same as yours, that advice may be not even relevant for you, and you have no idea what actually would prevent stones for you. Another thing to think about is what other medical history did he have? We know that stones are intertwined with all sorts of things, especially thyroid disorders, eating disorders, gut history. So if you had, a history of gastric bypass, or if you have inflammatory bowel disease, so like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, or if you have, honestly, like different medications are going to change your urine, and that's going to modify how your stones are forming, and that's going to really dictate what we can do to prevent them. Like all of that is going to impact if what worked for the guy next to you, if, as we learned, is even what didn't cause him or caused him to not have a stone, if that's even going to be relevant for you. And again, I doubt that you're having these deep conversations with the person in the Facebook group about all of these types of things. It would be impossible to do. And so that's reason number two, is that we really don't know what kind of stone this person has or what was really causing that stone. And then the third reason why I would highly advise against taking this "it worked for me" advice is that changes and recommendations are never benign. No matter how seemingly harmless this advice is, recommendations always have consequences, whether it is a diet change or taking a medication or taking a supplement or doing something in your life. Recommendations are never benign, and a true healthcare professional is going to understand the implications of what they're telling someone. I think this is one of the I get really fired up about this because I think this is what's so dangerous about a lot of the wellness influencers out there. Like, for example, saying that, we can only eat organic fruits and vegetables. I should do a whole nother podcast. I'm not going to go into why that is very silly harmful advice, but for the purposes of today, just think about the implications of that. Think about a world that we live in where a very large percentage of people cannot afford food, period. So now you are going out there and demonizing conventionally grown or non-organic fruits and vegetables and saying that, no, you have to buy organic. Well, for a really large percentage of the population, those more expensive organic fruits and vegetables are going to cut into their food budget, and you are making them potentially feel bad about buying very healthy fruits and vegetables for their family, right? So that is just one example of why, and sort of the nuanced understanding of why it would be dangerous to give this advice of only purchase organic fruits and vegetables. For the record, there's no data to show that organic fruits and vegetables are better for you, or that conventionally grown fruits and vegetables are going to hurt you in any way. So yes, just for the record, a side note. So back to my outline today for our podcast is that these changes are never benign, and that even something that seems harmless, like only buy non-organic organic fruits and vegetables, really can cause harm to a lot of people. So when we think about kidney stone changes, whether it be taking the supplement, I kind of go back to that, or making this diet change of a low oxalate diet is a really great example too. There could be unforeseen side effects. So when a change or when something is recommended by research, one of the points of evidence-based recommendations and evidence-based nutrition is that research studies can check for these unforeseen side effects. Of course, nothing is foolproof. We never completely know. But we're able to look and see like, oh, okay, we think that this supplement is, quote, all natural, whatever that means. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be some harm done to maybe something we had no idea. And so when we take recommendations from research, we know if there are side effects of this recommendation. Maybe it's impacting your heart in some way that we didn't realize, or maybe it's causing diarrhea, or maybe, who knows? There's endless things that could be going on. And these sort of unforeseen events are very regulated in research. When you're doing sort of an interventional trial, you have to report, you have to track all sorts of stuff. The subjects have to report any sort of weird things that happen. So we know if there is harm into whatever recommendation we're understanding. And even when you're looking at sort of like large epi trials that are looking at, huge groups of people retroactively, you're able to sort of see like, okay, maybe these people who followed a low oxalate diet did have less stones. For the record, there's no data to show that that's the case. But maybe they also had a higher sugar intake, and they had greater likelihood of heart disease, or whatever it is. I'm making this stuff up. But you see the point is that when we look at these things from a research lens, we're able to identify these types of things. The other thing to think about from the standpoint of changes or recommendations are never benign is that there's always some sort of cost to making any sort of recommendation, whether it is simply the financial cost of that supplement, which for many cases is not minor, right? Supplements, especially when we're talking about stones and talking about something that you have to do in theory for the rest of your life. So telling someone to take a supplement that costs, say, $30 a month even, or some of these cost a lot more, right? That is a huge cost to that person. So that is one potential, side effect, or like one potential cost of making a recommendation. Another thing is stress. So the stress or additional mental load of having to take even a pill every day. That's something that doctors should be considering when they recommend medications for you. Or the stress of making a dietary change, which I think is very significant. Even we'll talk about like a low sodium diet. Just that one thing can be very stressful. I'm sure many of you would, if you've had a stressful experience trying to follow a low sodium diet, please let me know. Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it, because it's hard to make dietary changes. We know making even just one change is very stressful. Humans are creatures of habit, and we like to do the same things, and especially adults. It takes a while for us to learn, right? We've been doing the same thing for decades. And so there is definitely some stress to telling someone to follow a low sodium diet, or to follow a low oxalate diet is incredibly stressful, or to limit protein. That could actually be very harmful. And I see doctors doing this a lot, is they don't understand that, there are massive differences for even people with kidney stones in higher protein needs, lower protein needs, right? There's lots of nuance to this. And so there's always some sort of stress in making a lifestyle recommendation. And another thing to think about is that even if it's not that hard, it's not that stressful to make whatever change this person is telling you to do, it's definitely going to divert your attention potentially from things that might matter more. So unless we know what's really going on with you and we really understand what is causing your stones and what's going to make the biggest impact for you, there is a very high chance that, focusing on, I'm going to throw out a low oxalate diet because that's what everyone focuses on, and 9 times out of 10, that is not the issue. That is diverting you and derailing you from focusing on what actually might matter more. Because again, making change is hard. Making just one change is hard. And when you're trying to make 75 changes or even 3 changes, I'll try to not overstate things here, but even just making 3 changes or 2 changes at the same time is very hard. Oh gosh, there's data that shows that it takes something like 6 weeks. No, it's longer than that. Gosh, I'm blanking. But like a surprisingly long amount of time to make just one change habit. And so when we're talking about doing all these things at once, it's hard. And so it's really important that you know that you are working on the things that are really going to matter most for your stone prevention. And so all of these reasons is why I need a really good reason. If I'm going to tell you to do something, I make 1000% sure that I have very good data to back up whatever I'm telling you to do, because I understand that there is cost to whatever I tell you to do. And I want you to live your best life, happiest, most delicious, least restrictive life, and still prevent stones. And so I make sure that I am 100% positive that whatever change I'm going to tell you to make is going to lower your risk of stones. So those are my 3 reasons. Hopefully that was helpful. I hope that I conveyed, I'm sure you could tell through my voice, that I'm pretty passionate about this. And all of this is really why I do what I do. I started the Kidney Dietitian in the first place as a side hustle. My website went live in April of 2020 when I was still working at the University of Chicago in the section of nephrology with some of the top kidney stone doctors in the world, because I had learned myself so much as a dietitian about kidney stones. And I realized, from starting to hang out in some kidney stone forums online and from what my patients were telling me, that there is an atrocious amount of misinformation and information of this, like, it worked for me advice, if you will, that I talked about on this podcast today. And that is really what drove me to do what I do now. I almost felt this ethical push to put good information out into the world, because there's so much harmful information and why there's so much generic information. That really is why I do what I do. And all of this is why it's so important to really look into the credentials of anyone you get nutrition or health advice for anything. And this is true for, of course, not just kidney stones, for any sort of health advice. And today happens to be National Registered Dietitian Day. Total coincidentally, I had this podcast planned for a while, but it kind of was funny that it landed on today, which is RDN, or Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Day. So I just wanted to put a plug for registered dietitians. Dietitians are the only healthcare professional with any nutrition education. Doctors, there's like recommended nutrition, but a lot of times programs don't actually adhere to it. I believe that the average doctor has something like an average of 6 hours of nutrition training during their entire training as a doctor. Same is true for nurses and for physical therapists and for any other healthcare professional. They just don't have nutrition education, which is okay. A lot of times people get all upset and like, oh, doctors need to have nutrition. I honestly don't think so. I think there's no way that one person can be the expert in anything. And this is why registered dietitians exist. I certainly am not a doctor. I certainly am not going to tell you what procedure is best to remove your stone, because that is massively outside of my scope. You can't know everything, right? There's so much. I feel like, we've learned so much in all aspects of healthcare. We need to have specialists, to have people who really understand what they are talking about, right? And so I don't think that doctors or other medical educators need more nutrition education. I just think we need more dietitians and need to have dietitians covered. Insurance needs to cover dietitians. And we just need to have dietitians in urology offices to help prevent stones. I believe that something around only like 8% of urology offices partner with a dietitian in any capacity. So it has to lead me to believe that significantly less than 8% of people with kidney stones ever work with a dietitian at all, which is dismal, obviously, and why I do what I do. So if you want to learn more about me, if you are new to me and you want to understand a little bit more about why you should listen to me when it comes to stone prevention and why I truly am an expert when it comes to kidney stone prevention, you can check me out at thekidneydietitian.org /about. Again, thekidneydietitian.org /about. You can learn more about my history, the presentations I've done, the research that I've published, the organizations that I'm affiliated with, that I'm a leader in. I have volunteered extensively in the National Kidney Foundation, the American Kidney Fund, the Renal Practice Group, which is a sub group from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I'm actually stepping in. It was just announced today that I will be stepping into the chair-elect role of that organization. So point being, really look into whomever you're listening to, because there's a lot of people out there who sound really good and give really compelling, exciting advice that probably sounds too good to be true. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So with that, I'm going to end this episode. I really hope that it was helpful for you and helps you maybe sift through some of the noise out there and helps you understand why it really is so important to take science-based nutrition advice from people who really know what they're talking about, because there really is harm. There is a lot of harm being done in this arena. So with that, I will close this episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast, and I hope to see you again next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.